Παιδιά, σήμερα βλέπουμε love play προσπαθώντας να μην γελάσουμε.
Everyone listen up. This was the most dangerous man who ever lived. During the late 1940s, a plane transporting over 100 prisoners crash-landed on a remote island. Only about 30 survived, including a man named Grant Heft Otto, who was originally in custody for stealing and selling cars. For the first few days, the survivors were fine, but weeks went by with no rescue, and panic started to spread. When the emergency rations finally ran out, things got even worse. People began disappearing, one prisoner every single night, including Grant himself. Some believed the center of the island was haunted. Others thought someone was hunting them. By the end of the first month, only a handful of prisoners were left. Desperate, they decided to explore the island's interior. After a long walk, they spotted a small wooden cabin. But when they approached, they froze in horror at what was inside. Before they could react, a man burst through the doorway and sprinted toward them. The survivors ran back to the beach only to realize one of them hadn't made it back. After talking it through, they finally understood the truth. The man in the cabin wasn't a monster. He was Grant Heft, auto-changed, feral, and hunting the others to survive. Everyone listen up. Everyone listen up. This was the real Peppa Pig. In 1952...
Βλέπετε παιδιά, βλέπετε μόνο fake πράγματα ξέρουν να πούνε.
In South Texas, the Parker family lived in extreme poverty in their small homeland, which housed a large number of pigs. For unknown reasons, the family decided to conduct experiments in which they tested pig DNA on themselves, with a special focus on the youngest daughter. Over time, these practices were eventually reported to the authorities by a worker who knew the family. When the police arrested the members of the family for their activities and abuse of their own daughter, they made a disturbing discovery. The girl presented grotesque features, a warped blend between human and pig. During the interrogation, the family revealed an alarming reason for their actions. It was not because of a lack of money, agricultural hardship, or mental illness, but simply out of a desire to exercise absolute control over themselves and over their daughter. They believed that creating this hybrid would grant them ultimate power and even immortality. The next day, the police returned to the Blackwood home to conduct a more detailed search. When the officers arrived, they were horrified. Everyone listen up. This was the real Peppa Pig. Everyone listen up. This was the most evil barber that ever lived. In 1962, a quiet town in Black Hollow, Tennessee, newbie friend Emmett Vale opened a small barber shop on Main Street. Polite and well-groomed, Emmett quickly became a favorite in town, offering discounted haircuts and a listening ear. But soon, his clients began behaving strangely. Martha, a widow, wandered at night toward the abandoned Black Hollow mine, claiming her deceased husband called her there. Every night, these haunted individuals would be found trance-like, heading toward the dark, desolate mine. One night, Jack's sister Clara decided to investigate Emmett's shadow. In a hidden room, she found photographs of his clients' terrified faces and realized Emmett wasn't just a barber. He was a sinister figure who fed on their fears, leading them toward the cursed mind he called Gate. Just as Clara made this connection, Emmett appeared, his friendly smile replaced by a chilling stare. She struggled as he tried to pull her toward a mirror in the corner, but in the chaos, the mirror shattered, sending shards flying and leaving Emmett nowhere to be found. To this day, the town speaks of Emmett Vale. Everyone listen up. What happened to this little girl?
Δεν μας νοιάζει παιδιά, αυτά δεν... Τέλος πάντων.
Everyone listen up. Never knock on this cute man's door. In the quiet town of Pine Ridge, Colorado, there was a house at the end of Briar Lane that no one approached after sunset. An elderly man lived there. His name was Nikolai Guy. He rarely left. He never received visitors. And yet his porch light was always on. In the fall of 1978, 4 teenagers decided to test a local rumor. They claimed Nikolai never slept, that he stood behind the door waiting. So they played a simple game. Knock and run. The first knock was harmless. The door opened slowly. Nikolai stepped onto the porch, thin still, scanning the dark street without blinking. The boys laughed from across the road, so they dared Ryan to do it again. He walked up alone, knocked. This time, the door didn't creak open. It swung wide instantly, as if someone had been holding it. Ryan didn't scream. There was no struggle. The other boys ran. They swore they heard the lock turn behind them. Ryan never came home. Next morning, police forced entry into the house. They found no signs of violence, but in the hallway near the door, there were fresh scratch marks on the inside. Everyone listen up. This lady was not as innocent as she looks. In the early 1970s, deep in a sparsely populated area near Kisatchie National Forest, Louisiana, there was a woman named Ella Vidor who ran a small traveler's lodge nearly 30 miles from the city of Applα. Most guests remembered her as gentle, almost unsettlingly polite. Ella became known for a single meal she insisted on serving every morning, a thick homemade stew that visitors later described as unforgettable. In late autumn of 1972, a telecommunications technician named Martin Hale...
Pardon παιδιά, να σας δείξω λίγο πού κάθομαι. Μπρο... Κοιτάξτε λίγο. Κοιτάξτε λίγο το δωμάτιο. Κοιτάξτε. Μες στα σκοτάδια. εκτός από αυτό και το φως. Βλέπετε? Όπως και να έχει. Ας συνεχίσουμε, παιδιά, το βίντεο.
Stopped at the lodge while traveling between job sites. As he filled out the guest ledger, Ella asked him a question he would later struggle to explain. Is anyone expecting you tonight? He said no. Sometime after midnight, he woke to the faint sound of humming. Standing at the foot of his bed was a figure, Ella, barely visible in the dark, quietly singing a lullaby he had never heard before. When he switched on the lamp, she lunged toward him. He managed to push past her, ran into the corridor shouting, woke the other guests, and called the police. When officers arrived and questioned Ella, she calmly said something that immediately changed the tone of the investigation. Everyone listen up.
Hey ChatGPT, give me amazing horror story that 5 years old you will believe. Συμφωνώ.
Everyone listen. Everyone listen. Everyone listen up. What happened to this girl in 1979 remains a mystery to this day. In the fall of 1979, an 18-year-old girl named Dana Lewis took a babysitting job for 2 kids in a quiet home deep in the woods of Minnesota. Nothing seemed strange at first. The parents left, the kids went to bed upstairs, and Dana sat on the living room couch doing homework. Then she noticed it. Every few minutes, the baby monitor on the table crackled. Not with the kids' voices, but with something else. Dana checked on the kids twice. Both times, they were asleep, like nothing was wrong. At 8:41 p.m., the monitor picked up a whisper. She's still downstairs. Dana froze. She knew neither of the kids could talk like that. A minute later, her chest tightened. Someone was in the house. Dana whispered up the stairs, trying to get the kids to answer. But the hallway stayed silent. The monitor crackled again. Let's play now.
Φα, παιδιά, φα.
Everyone listen.
Όχι, ρατατούι.
Everyone listen up. This was the most evil barber that everyone listen up. Everyone listen up. Never knock on this cute man. Everyone listen up. This lady was not. Everyone listen up. What happened to this girl in. Everyone listen up. This was the real life. Everyone listen up. This man built a time machine, and it actually worked. In the late 1800s, in a quiet town called Toontown, Delaware, a man named Kirk Lazarus was working on a strange invention down in the basement of his house. He had studied science for a long time and was fascinated with the idea of time travel. He truly believed it could be real. By 1873, Kirk finally finished his machine and asked his friend Justin Time to help test it. Justin said yes. He trusted Kirk and didn't think anything bad would happen. But as soon as Kirk switched on the machine, the room lit up with a blinding light. And when the light faded, Justin was gone. Kirk kept it a secret. Then, in 1885, something strange happened. Kirk read an article in the newspaper. A team of researchers found a frozen body in Antarctica. They said it was over 10,000 years old, but the man was wearing clothes from the 1800s. Kirk instantly knew it was Justin. He finally told everyone that his time machine...
Πρώτον, συμφωνώ, ο πρώτο φτιάχνουμε ChatGPT με ιστορίες που μόνο τα 5χρονα πιστεύουνε. Just in time, υπάρχει τέτοιο όνομα, ψάξτε το λίγο.
...worked, but soon after, the police came looking for him. Before they could catch him, Kirk used the machine again and disappeared. No one ever saw him again. Everyone listen.
Είναι ένα παιδί το οποίο...
Σου μοιάζει.
Everyone listen up. This man was working with the devil. Everyone listen up. This man was working with the devil. And the recordings he left behind still terrify investigators today. During the late 1950s in Memphis, Tennessee, there lived an unknown musician named Lucien DeVille. He played outside diners and half-empty bars. Nobody listened. He wasn't talented, he wasn't charismatic, and he wasn't going anywhere. But in 1958, everything changed. Lucien released a song called Midnight Promise. It spread through Memphis overnight. Jukeboxes replayed it non-stop. Listeners said the melody felt magnetic, as if something inside the song was pulling them back. Lucien's career exploded instantly. By 1962, a studio technician named Eli Verse noticed something unusual in Lucien's recordings, a deeper voice buried beneath his own. Curious, Eli ran the tape backwards. Instead of noise, he heard a calm voice reciting something that felt wrong. It sounded like a ritual, it said. Later, journalists uncovered that Lucien had bought a strange old book in 1957 from a Memphis antiquarian. A book rumored to teach rituals that could be hidden inside music to affect listeners without their knowledge. Everyone listen up. This man was working with the devil. Everyone listen up. This old man was pure evil. In the small town of Goobersville, Georgia, there lived a grumpy old man named Harold Jenkins. Following the passing of his beloved wife decades earlier, Harold had become a recluse, rarely seen in public. One day, the local newspaper boy went missing, and the last place he was seen was in Harold's neighborhood.
Κάτσε λίγο. Το παιδί είχε μουστάκι.
Suspicion quickly fell upon the solitary old man. The police, driven by the need to find the missing boy, arrived at Harold's doorstep. The sight that greeted them left them in shock. Exterior of Harold's home was unkept and neglected. To their surprise, the front door was unlocked, and they cautiously entered the disheveled house. The state of chaos...
Οι άλλοι δύο μπάτσιχ, ο χόντρος και αυτός εδώ. Κάτσε λίγο. αυτός και ο χοντρός εδώ. Γιατί κοιτάνε το τοίχο.
And neglect made it seem practically unlivable. The silence was deafening as they made their way through the house, their footsteps echoing in the empty rooms. Their search LED
Hey ChatGPT, write me a scary story about scary guy in 1991.
them to the basement door. With apprehension, they opened it. And there, sitting in a chair, was Harold, fixated on a broken TV. "Be quiet," Harold said in a furious tone. Confused and intrigued, the police officers exchanged glances. After a tense 30 seconds, Harold spoke again. "If you are looking for the boy, check the freezer. Everyone listen up."
What the fuck? Τι είχε δηλαδή το τέτοιο το ψυγείο, ρε? Τη μάνα σου.
Everyone listen up. This is the tragic story of the real Popeye.
Μ' αρέσει ο Ποπάι. Εγώ είμαι ο Ποπάι. Μ' αρέσει η πορή το σπανάκι.
Piper, known by his comrades as the true Popeye. The sailor was stationed at Pearl Harbor in 1941. With a tough demeanor and a heart cherished by his companions, Donnie was responsible for catching fish to feed the hungry men of the Navy. He had his own small boat where he often enjoyed a can of spinach, his secret source of strength, which he swore made him unstoppable. On that fateful December day, as Donnie was peacefully eating his spinach, he noticed a squadron of planes flying low over his boat. Recognizing the danger, he quickly lit his cigar and began throwing cans of spinach at the propellers of the enemy planes. His precise aim brought down 3 planes into the water, their pilots defeated by this unexpected counterattack, which left his comrades in awe of his bravery. But in the midst of Donnie's heroic efforts, tragedy struck. A torpedo hit his boat, causing the brave sailor to disappear along with his beloved vessel, leaving behind only the memories of his courage and selflessness. Everyone listen up. This is the
Titan from Temu and Mr. Clean. Συμφωνώ, bro.
Everyone listen up. Everyone listen up.
Φαζάλ. Ναι.
Everyone listen up. This American cop was not as innocent as he looks.
Με σένα μοιάζει, ρε. Τι είναι αυτά που λες, ρε?
In 1965, an officer named Harry Kane was a cop everyone trusted in the small town of Blandford.
Πρώτον λίγο. Παιδιά, θα
named Harry Kane.
εσείς σε ένα τέτοια μούρη. Ψηλό άντρα.
Was a cop everyone trusted in the small town of Blandford, Arkansas. People called him the nicest guy in town. But behind closed doors, Harry had a secret. None of the criminals he arrested ever made it to jail. One night,
Τι τους έκανε δηλαδή? Τους έβαλε σε τέτοια, γιατί έβαλε σε βάζα? Τους έβαλε σε βάζα?
a young rookie officer named Justin Time noticed something odd.
Κάτσε λίγο, υπάρχουν 2 Justin Time σε αυτό το κόσμο.
Harry never wrote reports. He joked that paperwork was for losers. But Justin couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Curious, Justin followed Harry one night after he arrested a drunk driver. Instead of heading to the station, Harry drove into the woods. Justin watched from the shadows as Harry dragged the handcuffed man from the car and LED him to an old abandoned cabin. Inside were rows of jars, each with a name tag. The man screamed as Harry
The fuck?
stuffed him inside. He sealed the jar and calmly placed it back on the shelf. Horrified, Justin stepped back, snapping a twig. Harry froze, then slowly turned toward the noise with a calm smile. He said, "Sometimes I keep them close so they don't get out of hand. A jar a day keeps the crime away." Everyone listen up.
Εσύ, ναι, δεν έκανε κάτι κακό. Τους likes τους έβαλε μες στο κόλο του. What the hell?
Everyone listen up.
Αυτό δεν λειτουργεί.
Everyone listen up. This man was hiding something terrifying under his house. In the 1970s, in the suburbs of Chicago, there was a man named John Wayne Gacy. On the surface, he was the perfect neighbor. He owned a construction business through block parties and even dressed up as Pogo the Clown to entertain children at birthdays and hospitals. But behind closed doors, John had a terrifying secret. Young men and boys kept vanishing in the area. Most were last seen near John's house or accepting work from his construction company. Whenever police asked, John laughed it off and said he didn't know anything. But the disappearances continued.
Κάτσε παιδιά, ο Μπρο ήταν σε μια φασί. Χαχαχαχα, δεν ξέρω τίποτα.
In December 1978, officers finally got a warrant to search his home. First, it looked ordinary. But when they entered the crawl space under the floorboards, the smell hit them. They started digging and found bones. Not just one body, not 2, but dozens. Over the next weeks, investigators uncovered the truth. John Wayne Gacy had murdered at least 33 boys and young men. He would lure them in, handcuff them, and then bury them in shallow graves beneath his own house. Everyone listen up. This man was hiding something.
Okay. I don't know why people think this is not true. John Wayne Gacy died in his 50s because of death row. He killed 33 boys, and people discovered 29 buried bodies. He's dressed up as Pogo the Clown and killed people at birthday parties, and the victims were never discovered. 4 bodies were found at Des Plaines River, longer than their neck. John, I think he killed people by getting a rope and that's what I heard, but at the birthday parties I don't know. The only one that I just said that I know where when he pretends to be a boss at countryside.
We've all seen those stupid viral clown videos. Kids dressed up, chasing people, acting like maniacs for clicks. But this one's real. John Wayne Gacy was famous for dressing up.
Έτσι μοιάζει αυτός ο Πάτσο
Everyone listen up.
Ωραία.
Everyone listen up. What this man did was pure evil. In 1924, multiple disappearances began taking place in the small town of Goobersville, Indiana. Over the course of 3 months, more than 72 people had gone missing, and it was reported that all of them were last seen near a 200-acre farm. When the police went to investigate the owner of the property, they were met by an awkward, creepy man named Billy Wonka. But that wasn't all. They were also greeted by his 500-pound pet spider, Tony. When the police asked Billy why...
Κάτσε, Τόνι. Η αράχνη λέγεται Τόνι. Μήπως λέγεται Τόνι Σταρκ και είναι ο Spider Iron Man. Χαχαχα, αστείο,
Many people had gone missing near his property, he replied with a smirk, "I didn't do anything." With no concrete evidence to hold him, the police left the property. However, they were almost certain Billy was involved in the disappearances, so they set up a sting operation. An undercover officer was sent to walk near the front of Billy's property.
Αυτός, περιμένετε, αυτός εδώ δεν θα πάει σπίτι του για να ξαναδεί τη γυναίκα και τα παιδιά του. Είμαι σίγουρος.
To draw him out. Almost
Πήγε μόνος του.
immediately, Billy approached the officer and offered him a free shovel. The officer, playing along, agreed and followed Billy onto the property. Billy led him inside his home, where they quickly found themselves face to face with Tony, the giant spider. Without warning,
Tony the Stark, the Spider Iron Man.
Billy yelled, "Sick him!" Him and Tony charged at the officer. Everyone listen up.
Κάτσε λίγο παιδιά να γράψω ένα σχόλιο. Is the Spider Iron Man.
Για 5 λεπτά μόνο. Δεν μπορεί να... Εγώ που το παίρνω. Απαράδεκτη είστε.
Εσύ είσαι απαράδεκτη.
What this man did was, everyone listen up. This man was the most effective marriage counselor in Chicago, and there was a reason for it. In 1934, somewhere on the south side of Chicago, in a narrow office called the Reconciliation Bureau, a man named Willie Stroker offered something new. For $500, he'd say, "I guarantee your husband will come back to you improved." Desperate wives lined up. One of them, Mrs. Humps, signed the papers without blinking. Her husband had been cheating for years. The next morning, he came home with flowers. Polite, quiet. He never looked at another woman again. Words spread fast, but Detective Harold Wood started asking questions. Many men were changing overnight. One evening, he followed Stroker to a warehouse near the docks. Through a fogged window, he saw a man tied to a chair and Stroker whispering something he couldn't quite hear. Then a sudden laugh from the tied man. "You think I didn't know my wife paid you last week?" Willie smiled. "Exactly. And now it's your turn." Wood pushed forward. The floor creaked, and in that instant, everything went dark. When he looked again, the chair was empty. Just a dark stain where the man had been turned to run. Everyone listen up.
Wow.
Everyone listen up. The real-life Tooth Fairy was actually very creepy. In 1992, in the town of Sweet Gum, Mississippi, kids started waking up to find their teeth missing. Not just the ones they had lost, but perfectly healthy ones too. The culprit? A man named Dennis Grinders, who dressed as the Tooth Fairy. Dennis would sneak into homes at night whispering, "A smile is priceless," as he collected teeth from under pillows or straight from people's mouths. Local parents grew suspicious when Dennis started selling homemade dentures at the flea market. To catch him, the police set up a sting operation using a decoy tooth made from glass under a hidden surveillance pillow in the home of an officer's child. Late at night, the police patrol caught Dennis slipping through a locked window, wearing wings that glimmered in the moonlight. As he reached for the glass tooth, the officers burst in, but Dennis didn't flinch. He smiled a slow, eerie grin as dozens of loose teeth fell from his lips like rain, scattering across the floor. Dennis escaped that night, and to this day, Sweet Gum residents leave old teeth under their pillows just to keep him away. If you don't, you might wake up with an empty grin and no memory of the night before. Everyone listen up. What this woman did to those children was pure evil. In 1945, in a quiet town, Ohio, parents whispered about a woman
House, yo, let's go.
named Martha Simmons. For $1,000, she could turn any troubled child into a model student. No ads, no flyers, just word of mouth. The Davies family called her out of desperation. Their 8-year-old son, Josh, had been expelled twice. Martha arrived that same evening. She carried a small leather case and a calm smile. She spent exactly 1 hour in Josh's room, just silence. When she came out, she looked pale, hands trembling slightly. "It's done," she said, and left. The next morning, Josh was polite. Too polite, but something in his eyes was gone. Like the part that made him had been erased. Over the next few weeks, other children in the neighborhood started to improve. Then one night, a neighbor heard voices in the Simmons backyard. He looked over the fence. Dozens of children standing in a perfect line, staring at the house. He called out. Every single child turned their head toward him. At the same time, their eyes caught the porch light. They glowed like cats. That's when he noticed the woman behind them, half in shadow. Everyone listen up. What? Everyone listen up. These two handsome fellas attempted to build the stairway to heaven, and it kind of worked. In the year 1915, brothers Earl and Brock Lee moved down to Jazz City, Utah for work. They eventually both got jobs in construction. But just a few months in, Brock was struck in the head by a piece of debris at work and had to take time off. After the accident, Brock was never quite the same. That's when he came up with the idea to build a stairway to heaven. After a little convincing, Earl decided he would help. The two of them moved into a small house on the side of a mountain and began construction. After a couple of years, they had actually built the stairway up to about cloud level. But sadly, in the year 1917, a man named Ray's Ends was flying his personal plane and accidentally crashed into the stairway, unable to see it through the thick clouds. Tragically, the entire structure came crumbling down with the brothers still at the top of it. Obviously, the brothers and Ray didn't survive the accident. But in a way, they did reach their goal. Everyone listen up. Everyone listen up. This man caused a whole state to go into lockdown. In the year 2003, a man named Ben Doberman stood trial for the disappearances of over 52 people in Washington state from the years 1974 to 2002. Ben was described as over 7 feet tall, but weighed only 140 pounds. He would often be spotted walking alone on the side of the highway in the middle of the night, dressed in a suit. Many kind-hearted individuals would pull over and offer him a ride, unknowingly falling victim to his sinister intention. However, in 2002, a man driving a truck accidentally hit the 7-foot-tall figure and drove away. The following morning, police arrested Ben Doberman after he sought medical attention at a hospital for his injuries. Due to prior suspicions and mounting evidence linking him to the disappearances, he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. But in 2009, Ben was nowhere to be found. Not in his cell, not in the yard, not even on the prison cameras until they looked behind the Scooby-Doo poster hanging in his cell. The warden immediately picked up the phone and called the governor of Washington. Within the hour, a statewide lockdown was declared. Everyone listen.
Meet Axio.
Everyone listen up. This is the true story behind Captain America, and it was truly terrifying.
Wow, αληθινός Αμέρικα, θα δούμε αληθινό Iron Man.
In 1943, before the war ended, the U.S. military launched a classified experiment known only as Project Sentinel. Its goal was simple. Create a soldier who never tired, never disobeyed, and never died. The first volunteer was Elias Turner, a young recruit chosen for his perfect health and his willingness to serve as long as his country needed him. At first, the serum looked like a miracle. Elias grew stronger, faster, and unnaturally resilient. Scientists celebrated. They believed they had created the perfect soldier. They were wrong. After 2 weeks, Elias stopped sleeping entirely. He stood for hours staring at blank walls, whispering names no one recognized. He checked behind doors every few minutes, certain someone was there. He wasn't just enhanced, he was becoming paranoid. Then the real horror began. Weapons went missing from storage. Guards vanished from their posts. Security logs showed Elias walking the halls at night, saluting empty rooms as if receiving new orders. One morning, the scientists found Elias kneeling in the corner of his cell, smiling at a wall. Everyone listen up. Everyone listen up.
Hey ChatGPT, create me a story on real life Captain America. Make sure it's extra scary. What the
This is the true story behind Captain America, and it was truly terrifying. In 1943, everyone listen up. This American woman was not as innocent as she looked.
America.
July 13th, 1954 in Indiana, a woman named Emma Hogg kidnapped 2 of her own children. They had been taken from her and placed in the custody of her ex-husband, Charles Druler. Emma had lost custody because she could not provide for them, and doctors had already diagnosed her as mentally unstable. That day, she went to Charles's home, disguising her visit as a simple checkup on her children. But she had a much darker plan. Charles opened the door and invited her in. At first, everything seemed normal. The children, Sheila and Dookie, eventually drifted off to sleep. Then Emma persuaded Charles to share one final drink, just to let go of the past. Moments later, he collapsed unconscious on the floor. Emma quietly carried the sleeping children out to her car and disappeared. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Finally, police tracked her down to an abandoned shed deep, deep in the woods. Inside were 2 small coffins, carefully sealed. On each was written "Safe with Mother." When officers opened them, what they found was the stuff of nightmares. Everyone listen up.
Άρα τα παιδιά το σκότωσε.
Everyone listen up. This man is not as innocent as he looks. In 1943, in the sleepy town of Dunwich, an elderly doll maker named Mr. Whitaker ran a small, dusty shop. Children adored his lifelike dolls, each with eerily expressive eyes and delicate, almost human features. Yet as years passed, the townspeople began to notice a disturbing pattern. Every child who received one of Mr. Whitaker's dolls eventually went missing, leaving behind only whispers and worry. When a young girl named Rose vanished just days after acquiring a doll from him, her frantic parents grew suspicious. One stormy night, they snuck into the doll maker's house to search for clues. In the dim candlelight, they found rows of dolls on dusty shelves, bearing a shocking resemblance to the missing children, each frozen in lifelike poses. As they approached one particularly large, life-sized doll, they realized with mounting horror that it wasn't a doll at all. It was Rose herself, immobilized, her eyes staring blankly ahead as if pleading for release. Terrified, they turned to flee. But Mr. Whitaker was already waiting for them, his twisted smile widening as he whispered, "Would you like a doll in your likeness too?"
What the
Everyone listen up. This was one of the first TV shows ever, and it was pure evil. During the late 1890s, a man named Dan D. Lyons created and hosted a TV show where contestants would spin a massive wheel covered with the names of wild animals. Whichever animal the wheel landed on, that's what you'd be locked in a box with for 24 hours. If you survived, you'd win $1 million. But here's the thing. Nobody ever won. The animals ranged from lions to tigers to bears. And before every competition, they were always left hungry. The contestants were told the animals weren't real, just actors in costumes. That lie made them feel safe enough to sign up. But nothing about the show was fake. At the start of every episode, a message flashed on screen. All events in this show are fictional. But it wasn't. It was horrifyingly real. In 1899, a man named Mo DeGrasse became the first and only person to survive the 24-hour challenge. Trapped in a cage with a starving grizzly bear, Dan D. Lyons was furious. He didn't want to pay Mo the prize money, so he offered him a double or nothing challenge. Mo refused, enraged that he'd been lied to and nearly killed. Everyone listen. Everyone listen up. This was the real life Pennywise.
Σχόλια. Poor clone, sad story. Okay, για να ακούσουμε.
1954, Victor Lane was a kind clown who performed at the Black Hollow Carnival in a small Ohio town. But Victor's life had always been full of pain. As a child, he lost his family in a mysterious fire that destroyed their home. The townsfolk called
Είσαι σίγουροι πως δεν τον έβαλε αυτό στη φωτιά?
it an accident, but Victor overheard men joking about how the freaks got what they deserved. Despite his scars, Victor became a clown to bring happiness to others. But Black Hollow never welcomed him. One October night, a group of boys at the carnival decided to humiliate Victor. They set his tent on fire during his performance, destroying his props and leaving his face badly burned. The crowd laughed as Victor stumbled into the woods. After that night, the town changed. Children began disappearing. Parents would find red balloons tied to their doors or balloon animals on their porches. The mayor's son vanished after a balloon was tied to his mailbox. Some claim they saw Victor's shadow in the woods. A search party found a shack deep in the forest with old carnival props, burned family photos, and a mirror edged with the words, "Who's laughing now?" Everyone listen up. This is the real-life Squid Games. During the 1950s, a billionaire named Elon Huck created a secret
Ο ξάδερφος του Elon Musk!
game on a private island. He brought people from all over the world, people who had lost everything and were drowning in debt. He gave them a chance to win $10 million if they played a few games. But what they didn't know was that the games were deadly. If they lost their lives. One night after the first day of games in 1965, 2 participants, former military agents, managed to sneak into the headquarters where the games were controlled. They took control of 2 of the masked agents and wore their uniforms. They moved through the island and into the control room. With the games disrupted and the system breaking down, they freed all the remaining participants. Now the remaining players were in charge, and they demanded answers. One of the masked agents told them the truth. The man behind the games was billionaire Elon Huck, hiding in a bunker deep on the island. So they raced to the bunker. But the second they arrived, a helicopter took off. They looked up and saw Elon Huck smiling from above. But then, out of nowhere, a lightning bolt struck the helicopter and it plummeted to the jungle below. Everyone listen up. This is the real-life Squid Games.
Elon Musk.
Everyone listen up. This lady was pure evil. During the late 1970s in Redwater, Texas, there was a woman named Martha Pump who owned a small gas station right off Highway 19. People loved stopping there. Her gas was cheaper than anywhere else, $10 a gallon. But she said it was special blend. No one really knew what that meant. They just liked how long their tanks seemed to last. She was polite, always smiling, and never rushed anyone off her lot. She'd hand them a coffee, wipe the windshield, and ask the same thing every single time. Heading far tonight. It sounded friendly at first, but after a while, people started to notice everyone she asked that question to never seem to come back through town. By 1978, folks realized something was off. She never called for fuel deliveries, but the pumps never ran dry. When an inspector showed up unannounced, he said the air inside the garage was heavy, like a mix of bleach and gasoline. Martha told him the smell came from a deep clean. But when police returned later for a full inspection, the garage looked untouched. The floor drain reeked of iron, and along the back wall stood rows of old motor oil cans. Inside, something thick sloshed when they moved them. Everyone listen up. This lady was pure...
Emma.
Everyone listen up. This is the real-life Little Mermaid. In 1891... Everyone listen up. This man was pure evil. During the late 1970s in rural Alabama, there was a man named Clint Orson who owned a small roadside motel called the Blackwood Inn, just 15 miles from... Everyone listen up. This was the most evil man in history. During the early 1900s, there was a lawyer named Otto Matic who was known for never losing a case in his entire career, raking in millions over the years. But no one knew that he was actually sabotaging his opponents, which would lead to them not showing up in court, allowing Otto to win by default. This went on for years, until other lawyers began accusing Otto of causing their clients to disappear. They started to notice a pattern. Every time they faced Otto, their client would never be seen again right before the court date. The police were eventually notified, but there was still no clear evidence linking Otto to the disappearances. Just in case, they created a sting operation with a fake trial and a defendant who would be kept under 24-hour surveillance. And sure enough, the night before the trial, Otto was seen driving back and forth in front of the decoy's house. But unfortunately, he spotted an undercover cop and fled the scene. They tried to chase him, but Otto got away. He was never seen again by the public, and it was later discovered he had purchased a ticket to flee the country on the Titanic. Everyone listen up. This was...
Λοιπόν, οπότε αυτός παιδιά που ακούμε πέθανε επειδή ήταν στο Τιτανικό. Και επίσης λέει who the hell is he?
The most evil man in history. During the early 1900s, there was a lawyer named Otto Matic who... Everyone listen up. This is the true story behind Five Nights.
Αυτό θα είναι το τελευταίο που θα δούμε παιδιά και θα πάμε για το τελευταίο βίντεο, ναι.
Freddy's. In the 1980s across the United States, family restaurants featuring animatronic mascots became extremely popular. Inspired by industrial robotics, the machines were heavy, never designed to be around children unsupervised. One such restaurant operated in Utah during the late 1980s. Former employees later described the animatronics as outdated factory units repurposed for entertainment. Only the owner was allowed to access the internal mechanisms. Staff were told not to ask questions. Over time, several children went missing in the area. Some were last seen attending birthday parties at the restaurant. There was no direct evidence, and the cases were treated as unrelated disappearances. Employees working late hours began documenting odd patterns. Security cameras failed intermittently. Animatronics were found in positions they hadn't been left in. One night, guard died during his shift. There were no visible injuries. The cause of death was officially listed as heart failure. The restaurant was eventually shut down following safety violations. To this day, the incident is rarely discussed. Everyone lison up. This... Everyone listen up.
Αν σας άρεσε κάντε like και subscribe και